meeting to order of the TIRZ Board. Do we need to call roll?
Inglesby?
If you'll call roll, please.
Inglesby?
Here.
Mitchell?
Here.
Tobias?
Here.
Heiser?
Here.
Flores Kale?
Here.
Zuniga?
Here.
Bradshaw?
She's right
Here.
Parsley?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
Okay, the next order is to approve the minutes. I think we have two sets of minutes. We'd like to take both of those together. Is that appropriate?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the approval of minutes for item 1 and 2.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Are there any questions, concerns, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next is citizens' comment period. Did we have anyone sign up for citizens' comment?
Pervez?
Okay, if not, we'll go on to item number 4, consider and possible action to amend the joint use agreement for HCISD parking facilities. We'll take that.
Is that page?
I think I can address that. The district, the HCISD, and the city and the zone entered into an agreement in the 2020 era that addressed some authorized improvements on the HCISD property near the PAC for the purpose of having the district and the TIRZ number 2 participate in improvements to parking facilities there. And as part of that agreement, there was an agreement by the TIRZ to maintain landscaping as it gets constructed there. This amendment amends that agreement to add some additional areas that the zone would be responsible for landscaping in relation to those parking facilities.
So this item just makes it to where the city is going to be, or not the city, but the TIRZ is going to be responsible. So who's going to be responsible for the landscaping if the TIRZ is responsible?
The landscaping would fund the TIRZ, would fund the landscaping, and then the parties would have to determine who is actually, that part has not been addressed that I'm aware of as far as who's conducting the landscaping, but that would be addressed at a later time.
Okay, perfect.
I had a question, since it involves the school district. Is this TIRZ set up where any retail or assessed property tax revenue will not get contributed into the school? Like, will the school still get its share of the property assessed values?
Yes, the school does not pay any of their taxes into the TIRZ.
Okay, so the money in the TIRZ, the school district will still get
The school
the
district.
correct amount?
Yes, the
Okay,
school-
they're not gonna be shorted, right?
Correct. And there's legal limitations on them doing so now, but they don't participate in paying any of their property taxes into the TIRZ. So they get their full property taxes paid to them.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, so the trade that we made back in 2020 was so we're building Heroes Memorial Park, which needs parking. But all that parking is for the Performing Arts Center, and that's owned by the school district. And so rather than the city having to buy land and build parking for Heroes Memorial, we entered into the initial joint use agreement. We said, how about, and they were struggling to maintain it at that time. If you would look back to the way it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, they couldn't keep up with their landscaping. So we said, hey, how about we have the TIRZ pay for the landscaping in exchange? So that's sort of, think of it like the city and the county are paying for the landscaping and maintenance of the park, or the parking area. And then they will allow for us to use the parking for Heroes Memorial, to make it public essentially.
Right.
So it goes to Heroes Memorial Park and eventually additional areas around it. So that's what this is. It's just us, kind of everybody's giving a little something, and what they're giving us is parking.
I think when I was reading up on some of the TIRZs, their school districts are no longer allowed, right, to be part of TIRZs?
So it's, I mean, it
kinda faded out.
practically, right? School districts can contribute, but there's still, the values of the tax monies that they come in is still calculated for purposes of determining state funding. And so it's a very harsh financial penalty for a school district to participate in a TIRZ, therefore they do not.
Okay.
But they're legally allowed to?
They're legally allowed
Okay.
to.
They just choose not to because it doesn't make financial sense?
It does not make financial sense for them at all,
Cost them
because
twice as much.
Okay.
they would, yeah, because the state would look at the money as money coming into the district, even though the district is paying the money out.
Okay.
And so especially if they're a 49 district,
What
right?
does that mean? Sorry.
Property wealthy, where they have to pay in to the recapture program that the state runs, they could potentially have to pay the same money twice, once to the TIRZ and then once to the state. And so it just does not make sense for school districts to participate under 311. That's why the legislature had introduced Chapter 313 for the school district property tax abatement agreements.
And
Those
then-
have been phased out.
And they
but-
eliminated that too.
Yeah. A derivative of that may come back after this legislative session, but
Right.
that's
So
kind of,
311 and 313 no longer correlate to the schools?
311 is no longer effective, yeah. Or 313 is no longer effective, that phased out at the end of last year. Again, school districts still could participate under 313, but it's just not financially feasible for them to do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Is there any other questions or comments? And thank you all so much for sharing that information. It's been helpful. If not, is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 3.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move on to item number 4, consideration and approval of a resolution of the Board of Directors of Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 2, City of Kyle, adopting and recommending to the City Council approval of the amended and restated final project financing plan, approving the extension of the term of this zone, and recommending that City Council issue its City of Kyle, Texas Tax Increment Revenue Bonds Series 2023, Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 2, City of Kyle, and providing an effective date.
So Stephanie Libby, North Bruce, Fulbright. The resolution that the board's going to consider tonight does a multitude of things. Primarily, it approves this updated project and finance plan. Oh, am I not on? Okay. Is that better? It approves the amended and restated project and finance plan. So as we kind of discussed at the last board meeting, we've taken the feedback that was provided by the board and incorporated that into this plan. You can see if you go to Exhibit C of the plan, it would have the proposed project costs associated with improvements that will be TIRZ funded. Included in those project costs are the $20 million, that's repayment to the city for the parks that have been city funded but will be TIRZ reimbursed. There's a line item for ongoing maintenance of those park facilities. There's a $8.8 million line item for other expenses, which would be subject to discretion of both this board and city council for how those funds are expended on an annual basis. We have a line item for principal and interest of the $8 million TIRZ revenue bonds that are contemplated. There's a line item, which is basically the delta of available revenues for proposed Series 2025. So that's money available that could be used to finance additional TIRZ improvements. And then public improvements, which is line item, or the public improvements too, is kind of the proposed budget for things that could be considered and included based off of feedback that was provided at our last meeting. If you go to Exhibit H shows, again, proposed improvements that could be TIRZ funded. This is both based off feedback that was provided and then just historical working knowledge of different ideas that were previously envisioned for this TIRZ. You'll see on this map, we have the 3 roads which are subject to the retail roads agreement. Those are the 3 roads that would be financed with the contemplated $8 million issuance that would be issued in a couple of months. We have just graphics related to a potential sports complex because that was envisioned at one point. We have convention center hotel, parking garage, surface parking, some office space. They have some intersection improvements, 5 trail improvements, and then also a pedestrian tunnel. So outside of the retail roads, all of these projects are kind of contemplated or proposed. They're subject to change based on direction provided by both this board and city council. So as values grow, as additional funds become available, this is definitely a plan that we can revisit over time and make sure that priorities at that time still align with where we are today. The agreement or the project and finance plan also recognizes the extension of the term of the zone. That'll be approved by both council and commissioners court. And so under this project and finance plan, the zone goes until December 31, 2057. So happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the plan. John Snyder wasn't able to be here tonight, but I'm here as a resource, and Andrew Friedman with Samco is here as a resource as well.
Okay, first question, public improvements, that, the 7.7 is actually this Exhibit H, correct?
A portion of Exhibit H, yes.
Okay, so if you look at the pedestrian tunnel and then the 3 circles on Kohler's Crossing, those are, half of those are outside of the TIRZ bond, or the TIRZ boundaries, is that correct?
Let me get back to you.
Page 20?
Yes.
I'd probably have to defer to somebody else who.
The 2 on the right are fully within, the one on the left is half. So Lennar is the boundary of the TIRZ.
Okay.
And so you can see sort of the light colored and see how like it stops essentially over the fairway landing or whatever. And then you have to kind of go back, I think, to wherever the other item is that shows the map of the TIRZ.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is Kohler's and Sanders, you know, the Sanders side is not in the TIRZ.
So the legal requirement for improvements that a TIRZ finance is that the improvements benefit the TIRZ. Improvements do not have to be located within the TIRZ.
Okay.
I have a question. The budget related to the TIRZ and expenditure of funds for, say, maintenance and operations, will we get a chance to vote on that budget at a later date before funds start being expended? Like if we want, like there's like a line item for like $650,000 for maintenance operations, will we get a chance to like review that before?
TIRZ Board should vote on budget each year for TIRZ revenues, and again, bring that to City Council for approval. What we have in here are just proposals and how you think the money would be expended. It's a 5-year look within the project and finance plan itself. That's the actual statutory requirement. But as to the actual expenditure of funds and how that money is expended, that's going to be governed by future action of both the board and council, and not necessarily by this plan. This plan just kind of sets out the vision, and then the implementation comes later.
And I know that there was a lot of discussion last week also regarding the issuance. Is this $8 million the issuance that was talked about that would be supported solely with city
Yes.
contributions? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
When I'm looking at the map, wouldn't we need an intersection improvement closer to the sports complex and the convention center? I'm just thinking that's where more density and the people are leaving. Do we have enough there to support them on those roads?
The developers, Momark, are paying for the intersection improvements at where the retail roads are being added. They're working with TxDOT, so.
We could have a light there.
Right, so you see
people
that-
aren't getting hit.
Yes, the main retail roads, like, you know, Showtime or whatever that
Map
road
20.
is, east and west, on page 20, that is there's going to be a full pedestrian intersection improvement. That's funded by the MUD and the developers. That won't be funded by the TIRZ.
So that area would actually lead to La Verde, correct? Right here, that road?
Yes, so the west, going west leads to La Verde, but I thought Councilmember Zuniga was asking about over 1626.
Well, around the sports complex, I don't know if we have, yes, there or something on 62.
Yeah.
And you mentioned too that which I'm okay with. I'm just wondering if we're missing an opportunity over there where basically you have like a stadium of people leaving.
I think whatever the intersection improvements for the sports complex would be funded out of the bond to construct the sports complex.
Okay.
So like on the east side, they directly across, they're building the new road as a part of that industrial
Okay.
business park. But it's a good point. You have to have an entrance into the sportsplex, but it's not a road. It'll just be an entrance into the complex.
So this one is capturing the roads,
Yes.
which is what the main goal.
Yes.
Not so much these intersections.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of this plan is really to get us to the point where we can do the $8 million bond issuance for the retail road project. This map is really designed not so much to identify any one specific future project that would be funded, but just kind of the universe of projects that has been talked about from time to time, either by the board or by city council.
And then if down the road, let's say we get this retail roads agreement comes through, then the land gets dedicated to us for the sports complex as part of this agreement. Then we go down the road, we start designing and planning for it, and we realize we want the TIRZ to fund a portion of the sports complex or some element like the traffic. We can always, with one meeting, come back and amend this plan to include it. So it's not, this is just basically how you can see it from now without a perfect picture of the future, just best you can, and it can be amended as needed.
Is the sports complex too far inland?
This is a really bad map of the complex.
So it's closer.
The
It's closer
complex
to
comes all the way to
1626.
1626.
Okay.
Yeah, I
You'd have to
think,
drive
I
by
imagine
and
John just didn't have the maps that we have, that we've gotten from Momar, because I haven't even seen them except in my email from a couple years ago. So he probably just doesn't have the updated map to show exactly where the outlines of the acreages are. But we could improve that map. And then honestly, this convention center hotel, I'm assuming that it's not parcel specific. So if the hotel ended up being,
None of this is parcel specific. I think as it relates to this map and the future vision, right, we asked staff just to provide us with, a best guess of if these proposed improvements would be located within the TIRZ, about where do you think they would be? It's not parcel specific, it's not tied down to anything, it's just kind of what is the vision of this TIRZ, and if we had these types of facilities, about where would they be located?
I'd like to make a motion then to approve, are we on number 4?
Yes.
To approve agenda item number 4.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, and more discussion.
I have a question. So for number 13.2, it says the zone shall terminate on the earlier of December 31st, 2057, or at such time that the obligation of the zone, including all project costs, have been paid in full. So project costs are only going to be added as the projects are completed or like when they are started. Is that correct?
As the projects are authorized,
Authorized, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But remember, you already have, right, the $20 million associated with repayment to city council, and so those are project costs, and so we know, at least for now, how long those obligations are gonna go out for.
Okay, well, I just see like the total project cost is $100 million, but I just want to make sure, by the grace of God, we get like somebody who's willing to fund some of this, that if it gets paid off sooner, that we can figure something else out. And it doesn't have to end on 2056. Is that, because it looks like as long as the project costs have been paid in full, then,
Then it can terminate earlier.
oh, okay. Just curious, that's it.
Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is First Amendment and Restated Transportation Improvement Design, Permitting and Construction Agreement.
That'll be me. I'll be addressing this item. with the issuance of the TIRZ revenue bonds, the next step would be to engage the contractor to construct the roads and the road improvements. The contract that's before you today is similar to contracts that you've approved for, I believe, La Verde Park, in which the city and the TIRZ Board engaged Plum Creek Developers, which is the Momark developer, Plum Creek Developers, to act as the consultant that causes the design contract to be, the designer to be engaged and a contract to be entered and cause the project to be bid and cause the contractor to be selected. So you kind of engage a consultant to manage that for you and to bring those documents back for review and approval by the TIRZ and the city, and to provide you oversight and reporting on the progress of the project and to address budgeting requirements for you. So that is the purpose of this agreement, to prosecute the work and to provide oversight and reporting to you related to the retail road project. A couple of notable things here. The city council approved a form of this agreement last year, and as we've progressed with getting the financing in shape and the project has been progressing, this had not come to the TIRZ Board yet because some of those details were being refined. So when you approve this, it's not a first amended and restated, it's just the transportation and design permitting agreement. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the developer has gone ahead and engaged an engineering firm, WGI, to design the roads, and they have, if they're not complete, they're almost complete. And so this agreement recognizes that WGI has been engaged and approves that engagement, as well as the cost of that engagement, which is $635,120, and approves that engagement. The TIRZ Board in this document also agrees to, and the city agreed to pay any costs of the project out of the TIRZ revenue bonds, which is a requirement of the retail roads agreement that we have that agreement. So it satisfies a term of the retail roads agreement. But this also provides that the city and the TIRZ are not obligated to make any payments under that WGI agreement until the city is in possession of the TIRZ bonds. So wanted to make you aware of that. The developer has proceeded with that and incurred costs, but those costs are not an obligation of the city or the TIRZ Board until you have issued those TIRZ revenue bonds and have received them.
But the city will be liable for that?
The city will have to pay that after the TIRZ bonds are issued and in hand. And then at that time, the contract would be assigned to the city so that you have privity of contract with WGI, and that means that they are obligated to the city to have performed under their license to prepare good plans, and so that you'll have a contractual obligation with that design engineer, and at that time you will have the obligation to pay, but out of the funds in hand. You will have funds. You don't pay until you have funds in hand.
From the TIRZ, I'm assuming?
From the TIRZ revenue bonds.
Do we have an amount, Perez, how much is currently in the TIRZ account?
You are not going to have to, you don't have to pay.
Right, no, I'm just curious
Okay.
overall, yeah.
So, Madam Chair, board members, for the record, I'm Pervez Mohit, City's Director of Finance. Councilmember, I believe your question was how much funds do we have in the TIRZ to fund? We currently have about approximately $2 million.
Thank you.
But the agreement that Paige just went over, it will become the TIRZ's obligation, and the TIRZ will be responsible for paying WGI's bill only after the bond proceeds are in our hands.
In the city's hands? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious how much we had in there.
But it's not available to spend.
It's not available?
Well, it'll be available during the budget cycle.
Oh, no, I get that, okay. So you'll tell me again later how much we have
Yes.
in there. Okay, thank you.
Will it be a one-time payout, or is it gonna be growing as the TIRZ is growing? Like, will there be additional cost in the planning to WGI, or is this a one-time kickstarting the project?
So my understanding is WGI is already designing, they're almost complete designing the retail roads. So by the time we have the bond proceeds in our possession, it will be pretty much 100% of the payment due.
So WGI is currently, if they're doing work, they're engaged with somebody. Who are they engaged with?
With the Plum Creek developer.
So if we said no, then the Plum Creek developer would be the one that's responsible for this payment.
Once you agree to this agreement, then we are responsible.
So why would we do that?
You're agreeing to agree. So this agreement says that you will reimburse or you will pay WGI once you have those TIRZ revenue bonds in hand, and you will be assigned to the contract.
Totally understood. My question would be, if, so it's already been started and that engineering group has been hired by somebody else, there's a payment already due. If we said no, the developer would be responsible for that payment. So why would the city decide instead to take that and put it into a bond payment that we would be?
This is tied to the retail roads agreement and the land that the city's getting in exchange for the retail
There you
roads.
go.
Part of what the city has to pay in the construction of the retail roads is the design of the roads.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe I didn't ask the right question, I was just curious. Sorry.
Can I make a motion to approve agenda item number 5?
There is a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussions or questions? Okay, if not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 6, discussion regarding scheduling of the next meeting.
Next week?
Your agenda item, Travis?
Wait. Wait
Tomorrow
a
night?
minute.
Let's go, tomorrow night.
You're killing us.
What is our next major task that we're gonna
The
need?
sale of the bonds.
When will that be?
Well,
y'all
but
put
that
that
doesn't
together?
have to be, we did that today, right? I built in today's resolution, the request for them to, their recommendation that the city council issue the TIRZ
Yeah.
revenue bonds. So that action of this board has occurred. I mean, I would think upcoming budget season, if you want to look at the TIRZ budget for next year and
The
have
TIRZ
that
budget for
TIRZ
sure, to
budget.
have a more robust discussion.
Yes.
And then also to identify the next immediate project, if any, that we want to pursue. Because there are a couple, like the surface parking next to La Verde, as La Verde's getting ready to be completed. That's also part of a joint use deal, similar, so we construct it, but everybody would participate. It's not even our land, it's the school district's land, or at least in part. But it's the same basic idea, and we could either issue a TIRZ revenue bond for that. I think it's maybe a couple million. The city could actually design and construct it in-house. So those, and I'm not suggesting we make any decisions on that, but I would love for us to have a meeting to discuss it, so. But that could be
Anything be brought
1
up
month at
Tuesday?
least.
What about Tuesday's meeting coming up?
It's too late.
Is that not enough time?
No, we don't, it's not that much of a
Okay.
rush.
We have our budget meeting May 13th. Do we want to add it to that agenda?
Well, it's our commissioners who drive the meetings. They're the ones that
That's a Saturday.
Yeah, I know.
they like to do those during the week meetings.
We could probably do it like on Thursday. Is that Thursday before? Yeah, the 11th? You okay with that?
What's that? I'll be out. No, I should be back.
We could do it like the 4th, because we have a meeting that Tuesday. 4th of May?
May the 4th, yeah. Further out than that, because we're gonna need time, staff's gonna need time to sort of prepare.
What about the 18th? That's a Thursday.
I like that better,
Should
or
we
the
shoot,
25th.
should we shoot for June or May?
I think May 18th.
May 18th sounds good to me.
Everybody else okay?
No.
Evening?
Would that work?
Works for
May
us?
18th? Same bat time, same bat time.
6 to 8? 7? 6 to 6:15?
6 to 6:30.
6 to 6:05.
All right.
There's no need to go into executive session, correct?
Do we need executive? No?
Okay, and so motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all so much.
You need this